Hello everyone, and welcome back to another R tutorial video. And in this video, we're going to continue our discussion on data frames by talking about how we can join data frames together. And there's going to be two videos on joining data frames. The first is going to talk about using rbind and cbind, and the second is going to talk about how to use the join functions from the package dplyr. Now we're going to talk about rbind and cbind first because they are the sort of default R functions for working with combining data frames, and they don't require the data to have a unique row in common, and hopefully that'll make more sense as we go through some examples here. But we're going to start, as we always do, by loading in a clean copy of the iris dataset. So what I want to do to use the rbind and cbind functions is I want to start by actually chopping up this iris dataset into thirds. So what we're going to do is going to create 3 subsets of the iris dataset, and this is a good opportunity to review that the indexing multiple values from the previous video. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a variable called first third, or f third for short, and we're going to set that equal to the iris dataset, and we're going to take out all columns, but we're only going to take out the first 50 rows. So we're going to do something like this. Now we'll take out the first 50 rows. So if we run that, and then just to show you that we've done that, if we hit dim of f third, you'll see that we have 50 rows and 5 columns. So then we're just really quickly going to do the same for the second third. But in this case, we're going to be taking row 51 through 100, again, all columns. And then the third third, which we're going to be taking out rows 101 through 150. So now what we've done is we've created 3 separate data frames, each a subset of iris, that have 50 rows and 5 columns. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the use of rbind and cbind, which are sort of brute force ways of combining data frames together. So what we can do here is we'll start with rbind first. Start with rbind. And what rbind does is rbind merges together into additional rows. So what that means is that if we were to use rbind to rbind the first third and the second third together, what we'll get is we'll get a new data frame that has 100 rows and 5 columns, because rbind merges them vertically. So you add the second data set becomes new rows. So let's just look at how that works. Rbind. So the function again is named rbind. And again, as with all functions, we use parentheses. And its arguments are the data sets that we want to bind together or merge together. So in this case, we're going to just demonstrate by using the first third. And we're going to use the second third. And what I want to do is I want to save this to a variable called row bind. Okay, so we're going to rbind the first and third data sets, first and second data sets together. So if we run this, and then we hit dim on row bind, you'll see that we have done exactly what I said. Right? We took the first third, and then we stuck the second third on the bottom, so we have the data sets stacked vertically, meaning that the second third became another 50 rows. So we have 100 rows and 5 columns when we use row bind. So the alternative to that is cbind. Cbind merges together into additional columns. Right? So whereas rbind merged them so that the second third became additional rows, cbind merges so that the second third will become additional columns, and that will hopefully be clear once we run through the example. So we'll do callbind equals cbind, and we'll do the f third and the s. Let's do the third, just to be a little bit different. So if we run this, right, we'll see that nothing shows up because we assign it to a new variable. But if we run the dim on callbind, you'll see that we now have 50 rows and 10 columns. So if we do names on callbind, sorry, I forgot the S on names. Names on callbind. You'll see that what we've done is we've actually created two sets of names. Sepal length through species from F third or first third, and then sepal length through species coming from third. So you'll see that we have the 10 columns here, as opposed to the 5 we had with rowbind. So hopefully this distinction makes sense between rowbind and callbind. The way that rowbind works, again, sticks the second data set on the bottom of the first to create a longer data set in terms of the number of rows. Callbind merges from left to right, meaning that the second data set goes to the right side of the first data set so that you end up with additional columns. One thing that is extremely important to remember with rbind and cbind, and this is one of the reasons why we're going to talk about the merge function from dplyr, is that rbind and cbind don't care about the order, and they don't require the data sets to have a similar or matching column. So, for example, first third and second third could be shuffled around in terms of their rows, and they would still go together the same. The first row in first third would be attached to the first row in second third, even if they weren't necessarily from the same observation. So hopefully that makes sense. The fact that rowbind and columnbind, or rbind and cbind, will just push the data sets together without any sort of expectation that the rows that are being merged together actually mean anything. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully it'll make even more sense when we talk about dplyr. But if you have any questions or you feel like you don't understand something, I strongly encourage you to go back, watch the video again, and as always, please reach out. Thank you.